Hello everybody and welcome to Monday again. I can't believe it. It always seems to be Monday or Friday because those are my filming days. But hello anyway. My name is Debbie. I am a mixed media artist and I have a couple of series running here on YouTube at the moment. One of them is my favourite 5, where I pull out 5 of my favourite colours from each sort of media and test them into a sketch. And this one is my Then and Now series, which I'm really enjoying because I've dug out this sketchbook that I did in 1921 I wanted to say, no, 2021, and I've left some blank pages. So what I'm doing now is trying to see how much my art style has changed by recreating the pictures on the left side of each one so that you can sort of see. I've done a couple. This one was the first one I did, so that was the original here from 2021, and this is how I would paint it if I was to paint it now. And indeed I did. That was on the 8th of May. This one was a Patreon exclusive one that I painted for my patrons, and this is the original, and this is how I would tackle the same subject now. So some of them are going to be on Patreon just for my students, and some will be on here for everybody. So if you like what I'm doing here, do please consider joining my Patreon, because you'll get so much more over there, longer, more detailed, and more content, of course. Yes, spreading myself very thin, but you know how it is. And don't forget, before I get into it, don't forget to leave me a like and subscribe if you like what you see here, and that will encourage me to do a lot more. Again, you know how it is. Right, let us start. So this one's a bit autumnal, and I did wonder whether I was going to paint in the same colours or sketch, because again, multimedia, I'm going to or mixed media. Gosh, it really is Monday morning, isn't it? I'm so sorry. I start with gouache, and then I layer coloured pencils and markers over the top of that to get the textures that I'm after. And I can see just by looking at some of these, I don't know, it's quite a naive style, quite tight and controlled, and it's not really, it was where I was at the time, I think. 2020 wasn't a fabulous year. It wasn't a fabulous year for anybody, to be fair. So let's see how it's changed now. So without any further ado, I'm going to go straight in my messy gouache palette. Let's wake that up with a spray of water. Otherwise I don't touch it, I don't clean it, I just add to it. I'm using a number 12 Deco Art Traditions Dome Blender, which if you've watched a few of my videos, you'll know I love this one. It hasn't got a tip, so I don't have to be careful, and I can scrub the paint on, because I tend to like to use my paints in a sort of a muddy way. The thing that a lot of people don't like about gouache is exactly why I do like them. I've actually made a preliminary sketch here just to save a little bit of time. Yeah, I actually like gouache because of its muddiness and its ability to be textural and basically almost a loose watercolour, which is, it's a relative of watercolour, so that sort of works. So the first big change I would make, let's get some mood into that sky, but not too much. Stop there. The first thing I would do is I wouldn't have a flatter sky. This is not completely flat like some of my skies. I think, yeah, this one is a lot flatter, whereas today's version is textured, and I would continue that here. Then let us go in with a darker, sort of add some to that. I may have to get a different brush for some of this because it's a bit big, but again, put that in. I'm not too concerned at this point about that being so dark because it gives me somewhere to go. So that was the number 12 Dome Blender. I'm going to go in instead with the number 10 because some of these trees here, let's see what colour we can come up with here. Just scrub those in. Maybe. Yeah, I can sort of get in around it a little bit easier with the slightly smaller brush. So what I'm doing here is just adding all sorts of earth tones, autumn colours, not using a lot of water. This brush holds a hell of a lot of water, and I don't want it to become too watery. A little bit fluffy is nice. Weird since we're talking about a tree. Bit of yellow. What yellow am I after? Yep, that will do nicely. I'd be the world's worst forger, honestly. I can't even copy my own work. I've got 3 trees there, and I've got 2 trees in the modern version. It will be absolutely fine, and I shall make it work. This is not my usual colour palette, actually, because I normally like a lot of greeny things. So that will also be interesting. It's all to play for, isn't it? Just fill this front part in with some brown, sort of quite close to the other one. Again, I'm not going for a really lovely coverage of brown, and I'm using a couple of colours, tiny bit of water, and I'm not washing my brush at all, because that allows me to get the watercolour aspect of the gouache going. This is a Hahnemühle sketchbook, and it takes quite a lot of a beating, actually, which is nice of it, since that's what I tend to give it. Now, the front one is a bit grayer, so let's just add warm grey into that. I'm deliberately not giving colour names because it doesn't matter. It couldn't matter less. Warm grey, so if whatever set of paints you've got, a warm grey will do. And a mid-brown, something like a burnt sienna for that bit. And you'll find that in any box or set or tube, whatever you've got there, or you can mix it yourself. Right, so get that happening. Okay, where are we up to? I think we've got a couple of, let's make these slightly yellower to stand out here. A bit of foreground interest. A little bit more there. So you can already see that I've left this style far behind. Also, the very tight control. If I was a psychiatrist, and I'm not that sort of doctor, I would suggest that coming out of 2020, which was really horrible, and feeling quite out of control, the whole year, everything was just up in the air and topsy-turvy and horrible, as it was for a lot of other people with COVID and the lockdowns and, family things and all sorts of stuff. When I look at the pictures that I was painting at that time, I can see a very tight, controlled aspect to them. So whereas I felt real life was out of control, it's come through in my artwork that I was trying to control an aspect of it. So I was creating a world where I was in control. So this tight border, pernickety little details. It's not me. So I can see all of that now that is totally different to now to then. So yeah, don't want to get too heavy there, but I bet there's at least one of you who can relate. Do let me know in the comments what you think, because it's really weird how we think we're doing fine and yet our artwork tells a totally different story. And it's only after a long time that you look at that you can actually see. Sorry, I just need to put that on the side so I can get some colour on the roof. Yeah, it's only with the benefit of time and distance, the sort of distance that time gives us. Gosh, that's bad. I'll fix that. That you can actually see what was going on at the time. And actually one of my sketchbook tours, the personal one, I'll see if I can remember to stick a card up for you here and you can have a look at that if you like. I bet I won't now. Do forgive me if it's a little bit out of sync. I've done a textbook tour, and it's the most personal one yet, where I looked at all my lockdown sketches and I thought, I'm doing fine. This is easy. When I look back on them, I think, no, it wasn't fine at all, and neither was I. So back to what we're doing here, a bit of grey on the side. And I want to get a little tiny sort of textural grey, not too textural, just a little bit. And again, that roof's a bit messy. I will fix that. Here I've got the ground going straight across the buildings and cutting them off in quite an unnatural way. what I'm going to try and do here is to blend them in. Now, rather than washing my brush, I'm going to wipe it. So some of the grey is still there, but I'll mix that with a bit of white and you'll get just the merest touch, because that's sort of closer to what I'm trying to achieve here. Okay, and here as well, again, not washing my brush. Unless I want to change, for example, there are a few times I would wash my brush. One of them is if I want to use green and I've got some white on my brush. I'm not a great fan of mixing white with green unless I'm going for that sort of jade green type tone. Right, I think we're good there. So you can already see the difference here. And I'm not going to lie, even though that's nice and I really like naive style work, this is, if I had to pay for this, I'd be paying for this one. Now I can see that I'm missing a very large tree in the middle of here. That was, by the way, a number 8 flat brush. So I'm not concerned about the brush. The brush is not important. It's just the fact that it fits better to do. I wanted something for the sharp lines on the houses. What I tend to do with my paintings is you'll see a contrast between man-made, as in houses, and they'll be quite tight, controlled and designed, as you would expect, and then you'll see the natural world, which isn't. I'm very tempted, and my instinct is telling me to leave that tree out, but I'm going to ignore my instinct and see if that works. So just let's pop something there, and maybe a little bit of, I could have used the dome blender, but I've decided that that will work as well. Now, while I've got this round brush, and this is a number 4 round, again, not important at all, get the right mix of grey. My students will all be listening avidly to what colour I come up with here. Right, so just trying not to put my hand in the paint. Again, I don't know why I do this. I've done it again. I'm right-handed, but I start on the right side and work towards the left, which is, it's baffling. My art can only be described as has experts baffled. Let me I'm just going to dry this, so just give me a minute and I shall return. Right, so we're more or less dry there now, and I can put my hand in it without worrying too much. So just increasing the moisture level of this a bit, because when you've got a brush like a round brush, you want the paint to flow from it, not be fluffy and dry like this. There's a time and a place for that sort of thing, and this is not it. Okay, where do I have a branch? I had one there. And I had a bigger one here, didn't I? Try and get as close as possible. Like I said, I'd be a hopeless forger of art. Can't even copy my own. That there. And I've done it again. So now I'm going to have to go back to the right side and attempt. I tend to like to paint trees from the trunk outwards rather than what I'm doing here. Okay, there are another 2 trees there. Let me just have a think about it while I'm putting this one in, because another thing, back onto the right again, so I'll have my hand in this in a second. Don't want that to become too naive, and I'm afraid it's going to. These trees here, I'm not sure how I'm going to do those, if at all. Because again, what I'm doing now, I'm going to soften this out. This is what I love about gouache. You can remove it with water. It'll make it muddy, yes, but that doesn't greatly worry me actually, because like I said, I like these muted colour palettes, and you'll see, actually, just let me show you what I mean. sorry, shameless plug for my Patreon coming up, but last week's tutorial was all about mixing colours if you've got a set of paints and you're using them straight from the tube. And to make the point, I did a sketch with the tubes, just using the paint straight from the tube in a set that I bought. It was quite a cheap set. And then I mixed them. And here's the result. You can see the one up the top is the straight from the tube, and this is how I showed my students how to mix those same paints to get muted colours. And that's very much what I like to do. So I like this loose, flowy style, not too loose though. I'm not ever going to become an abstract artist, but I like this loose style. And I like these muted colours. So yeah, if that's something you struggle with, that was last week's tutorial, and it's been exceedingly popular, as I thought it might be, because most times, especially when we buy a new paint product or a new art product, we might be tempted to buy a set because they are cheap. They represent good value. Also, people give them to us. If someone's going to gift you something and they know you like a particular thing, they might buy you a set, and that means you are always going to get stuck with some colours that you don't like. So I find that knowing how to mute them down is super, super important. Right, I'm going to probably leave those two trees out, but not necessarily. I'm going to see what I can do and what damage I've got here first. And then I'll dry this and I shall be right back. Okay, so I have got some, this is all crispy dry now. That's what you need. A lot of colour pencils in front of me here in warm colours. I've got my Caran d'Ache and my Derwent Light Fast sets. I'll also grab a couple from my beloved Derwent drawing as well. So, because normally, again, this is my normal colour palette of these greens. This is my normal colour palette. So I'll have some warm and I'll have a lot of green, and that's the green I would have. With this one, I've not allowed myself very much green at all. So now when you paint or sketch something, generally the accepted order of play is you go from the back of the painting towards the front. Back of the painting happens to be the sky. You can't get any further away from that, you know, without leaving our universe, which is probably not on your agenda. The mountain's the next thing in the back. So, French grey, Caran d'Ache Luminance French grey. Here I've got tightly controlled lines, which are supposed to be plough lines, highly unusual on a steep slope like that. So I'm starting off with some French grey, and then I might go in with burnt sienna 10%. And I want to bring this hill a little bit of light and a bit of texture, and I don't want to do too much to it because I'll bring it too far forward, so I want it to stay in the background. Normally with something like this you would use some of the sky colour in here, but because the sky colour's grey, this is grey, I've just used a totally different colour because I'm not using paint. So if I was just painting, I would just paint the mountain with the sky colour in whatever I was painting the mountain, and that will help push it back into the background. Do let me know if that doesn't make sense. Here I can use colours that are akin to the sky colour, so greys, and the burnt sienna 10% it's quite mauvey, but it's a mauvey sort of colour. Burnt sienna 10%. That goes with grey. It works really well with it. And I'll introduce that somewhere else here, probably in the front to be fair, because whatever I do back here, I will do in the front. Right, the next thing are these trees here. I'm going to go with a natural brown just to give them some shade on the bottom. Let's start with this one. Then I think, keeping the warm autumn, let's try dark honey and see if that works. Yeah, that's not terrible. I'm just desperately trying to find a substitute for my usual green that I would head for. Yellow ochre, Derwent Drawing Yellow Ochre, just to give it some highlight and of the sun shining through the trees. So this is actually a seen here first on television type moment, because normally I know what I'm going to use and I just get on and use it. Here, I don't know what I'm going to use and what's going to look right and what's going to look pleasing for the way I want this to look. Okay, not changing the colours too much. I'm still going to use the natural brown, which is a Derwent Light Fast, just to give all of these the same depth on the bottom. Again, quite messy. Fill that bit in there. There's a bit that didn't get some paint. Fill it in with this. And I'd probably use a version of what I'm using here for most of these. Because what that does, it's a kind of a limited palette, something I said I'd never do. Never say never. I need a different colour for this other one though. Let's go with a burnt ochre 50% and see what that looks like. Yeah, that's all right. That looks nice. Just to get that back one in, because it's already very similar to the dark honey that I'm using in these others. So I'll use that over here as well. Yeah, that works. I like that one. Even though the substrate is actually a burgundy, this helps to keep it all together. And that's what I was saying. Coming here with this sort of kind of a limited palette, it makes your brain look at it and read it as a coherent whole rather than actually a higgledy-piggledy all over the place sort of thing. So yeah, I don't like limiting my palette as in choosing some weird colours and deciding to paint something and see what happens. However, I wonder how yellow works. Oh, that looks really nice. That's nice and glowy. So Caran d'Ache Burnt Ochre 50% and Derwent Drawing Yellow Ochre work really well together to get that glow going. I like that. And now we know. Gone onto the tree there a little bit, which I don't want to do. I wonder, can I use that on there? Yes, I really do like that. That's given the colour I want. What I'm not keen on is the natural brown on the bottom. Yeah, I've got full set syndrome, so everything I buy, I've got to have all the colours, even if I don't use them. Let me just have a look and see if I can find a Tombow to help. Couple here, actually. I've got a Tombow number N49, which is, you can look up the colours, but they don't put them on there. What I'm going to do is fill in under here and then smooth that out with my finger. I want to deepen those shadows up a little bit, because the only way you can tell something's light is if it's next to something quite dark. And I'm not worried about that tree disappearing, because that will come out again in a minute. So just down here, and before it dries, give it a smudge, because I don't want harsh lines. There are no straight lines in nature, and there are a few harsh lines. We put those in, and that's the reason that I like my houses to contrast with the natural part of my picture, by being quite formal and structured. Okay, I might even go in deeper. This is a Lyra Aqua Brush Duo in dark sepia, and it is a really lovely dark sepia. So just down the bottom, that sort of thing. Just here and there, and lots of smudging. You can tell an artist or a gardener, their hands are always filthy, and this is part of the reason, doing this sort of thing. Yeah, see, I prefer that. And once that's dried a little bit, we can bring in some yellow ochre in the rest of it, just to fill in. And what I would also do is, instead of having these very tightly, these look like if someone's gone along with a hedge trimmer and has made a topiary out of everything, and that's not actually what happens as a rule. So let me see, is that one sharp enough? This one is a Derwent Drawing Light Sienna. Nope, it's not what I'm after at all. So let's go into Caran d'Ache Burnt Ochre 10% again. I've obviously got two of those. No, I haven't. The other one's Burnt Ochre 50%. Trust me, it wouldn't be unusual for me to have two of them. Just sharpen this up a little bit. I want a bit of a point on it, because I'm after something that is going to allow me to put in the rudiments of some branches and trunks. Because I've gone so dark down the bottom, I really need to go light for contrast. Not too many, just a bit, just texture. Texture is everything in my world. Okay, happy with that. Just a little bit. While we're here with this, that's a bit bright to be going on with, so I'll go back in with dark honey and just burnish it and warm it up, and also with the Lyra dark sepia, the thin end, just to bring it back a bit. There are a number of ways we can attack that. And here again, just a bit of natural brown on that side. This has got the danger of also looking a bit like topiary. And burnt ochre, 10%. Let's try that one. Actually, I think it was the burnt ochre, 50%. You can tell I don't use these colours very often. I have to read absolutely everyone. What I respond to first of all is the actual colour itself, and this one's yellow ochre, one of my favourites. Don't have to look at that one. I look at the colour on the end cap, and if that's the colour I want, then I worry about what it's called. And whereas the gouache didn't matter what colour it was, these colours sort of do, because people are looking for them actually, and they're looking for a particular colour. Okay, I'm going to do something. Let's go back in with that one. Not loving the way that tree's looking. Right, that's a bit better. Just still not pleased with it. Sometimes it's a matter of going backwards and forwards until you've found what you're after. And I don't, in the original, it stands out a lot because there's a yellow bush behind there. But again, it's just not real. I prefer this and a little bit more blended in, and we have to look for things. Leave that alone. Right, the next thing are the houses. Let's do a quite simple window like we have in the original. Going to pop them in with black first. This is my Derwent Drawing Ivory Black. Again, not something I reach for an awful lot. And just simple windows. And the roof here, I've sort of made like little roof tiles. Not that pleased with that. I'm going to go with a raw umber 50%, and I'm going to put the roof tiles this way this time. And again, I'm going to use a similar idea where I just do some flicks with this one. These are slate roofs usually. This is a picture in England. It's in the north of England, in the Peak District, or middle to north. And just doing these little flicks. I might come in with some burnt ochre 10%, a little bit lighter. And this also ties it in with the colour around it and makes it not quite so busy. I like using all the colours. I certainly like having all the colours, but it can look very, very busy. Black again, and this is just to fill in some of the area here, and you'll see why in a second, because this sort of echoes the substrate of black gouache. Because then what I'm going to do is get my Chinese white pencil. Again, love these, as you can see. And I'm going to go over the whole thing. Because what this is doing is this will grab on to where the gouache is. It can't touch the colour pencil. It'll go over it to a certain extent, but not perfectly. It will bite into the gouache underneath, leaving you with a textured look, which is a little bit less. Let me just bring that up a bit more. As you can see, this is very, very organised, very controlled. This here, a little bit more organic looking. That's the word I'm after. Make it a bit lighter towards the top where the whatever passes for sun. It's not a sunny day, as you can see. But this both burnishes those other two colours together and gives us a more organic looking roof. While I've got that in my hands, I'm going to make this a bit lighter because the sun usually, or the light usually comes from the left in my pictures. You can take that to the bank as a rule. I think I can count the number of times that doesn't happen on the fingers of one hand. Right, the roof there. Don't need to do an awful lot here actually. Let's get this burnt umber again and just increase the texture a bit here. What I would do too in the present day is grab my Albrecht Dürer watercolour marker in Warm Grey 4. It's a favourite. The tip is getting quite worn down. And I would introduce some shadow there. Probably also fill the windows in because the graininess is not exactly what I'm going for. But apart from that, and maybe a little bit of rubbing there, and I'm quite happy to rub that right through. These roofs don't overhang very fast, so it's best not to sort of get hung up on making them overhang. Then I would finish off with my white acrylic marker just to give the roof a bit of definition there again. And I might give the, just here, to give the outside a bit of definition as well. Maybe along the ridge cap here, but being careful not to outline it. If it looks too outlined, blur the line by making a few small dots and dashes. Here, the light side of the chimney, just so that you can tell it apart from the other side. And that's what I would do to the roofs. In fact, whilst I'm in this drawer with all of these pen markers, that was just a normal cheap Bega brand acrylic paint marker. It's 0.7mm off Amazon. Love them. I've been using it now for about 3 years, and every day my heart's in my mouth that today is the day it's going to run out. This one is a Touliart, again, extra fine. It's from their Earth Tones set. You can't buy these open stock. They're always in sets at the minute, which hopefully will change, but they're fabulous and worth having. And I'm still not happy. Oh gosh, bit of a blot. Have not used that for a while. I'm still not happy with this tree. It just needs a little bit of definition. I'll come back in. Those are too much the same. If you ever see a pattern in your work, break it as a rule, especially if you're trying to paint the natural world. I'll come in with that in a minute. But that's better. And then just glaze over it a bit with this natural brown pencil from Derwent Lightfast. I think that could do with having something, just a brown. This one is a waterproof Unipin fine liner in sepia, and I would just, that's even too light. I think I need something a bit darker. This one's the Tombow one. That's better. Just, I never ever make a mark unless I put shade as well, and then continue down to the rest of the tree. That's all right. I shall leave that because I'm happy with everything else there. Right, the next thing is this middle ground here. Now this is ploughed in my original picture, and I'm going to continue that. So I'm using my burnt ochre 50% Caran d'Ache. I really need to get these colours out a lot more so that I know what they are, because there are most of the colours I use, obviously I don't have to continually, every single time I pick up the pencil, I don't have to check what colour I'm using, but for these I do. Also, because doing so many things and doing this unscripted as well, I just don't want to get it wrong. I'm going in between here with natural brown, Derwent Lightfast. There, that just proves I can do it. I want to check now to make sure it is. I know it is, and I'm not checking. Okay, this again, I want to keep the texture from the gouache. but this deepens those furrows a bit. And then, yeah, the same one, I think. No, this isn't the same one. This is the other one, burnt ochre, 10%. Good grief. I would be better off with a limited colour palette, and I might have a chance of using them all then and knowing what they are. Okay, that. And here again, I've got a substrate colour in of gouache. I then come along and put the first part of the furrow in with my natural brown. I'll actually know with the burnt ochre 50%, and then come back and highlight with burnt ochre 10%. As you can see, they're all the same family. It's just 3 different colour values, and that's really quite important. So when you're buying things, don't buy 1 pencil or 2 pencils in hundreds of colours. Narrow the colour selection down a little bit and get 3 values of each one. Right, next I've got to sort some colours out for this. I think let's go in with natural brown first. And again, in the original I've gone in quite dark and then over the top with some gouache. With this one I'm going into natural brown to give it some shading. Again, we've got another ploughed field going in the opposite direction here. Then with our burnt ochre 50%, which is exactly what I'm after, which echoes these trees up here. That, and then finally yellow ochre, which gives us our highlight on the top. This is one of my must-have pencils, this yellow ochre. It's kind of right up there with Derwent Light Fast Forest and Caran d'Ache Green Ochre. Love it. And you'll see I'm also holding these two again because I don't want 100% graininess. I just want to fill in here a little bit and deepen the shadows a bit, especially as we come to the front of the picture. And whatever's on my finger also helps. Then the dark sepia. And using slightly less of that one. When that dries, which it isn't yet, it has to be dry. It just will not accept layers, as you can see. I'm just going to texturize the dark bit a bit with the yellow ochre. Okay. That's that. They are too much the same for me. That bothers me a little bit. I shall have a look at that in a second because they look too much the same. Maybe it needs to come down here a little bit. And what I can do there is remove some of the colour with my battery operated eraser because I don't like that at all. And then go back in with the mid value. I'm not worried about it looking so bitty and weird because I want a second lot there. Then back in with the dark brown here. Just colour in around there. Put some texture in and yeah. Because you do not want them all the same. And of course, going over with a lighter colour then burnishes it. Okay, that works. This colour here, again, we've got our mid-tone here. Excuse me. We need to go in with a darker tone, and I'm going to choose Mars Black from the Derwent Light Fast range. This time, going this way. I'm just getting those furrow shadows in. They disappear off there. For some reason, I've got a couple of different sorts of lines. I'm not doing that. That's not me. Okay, just deepening this bit here. got to be a little bit careful with Mars Black, because when I go over this with a lighter colour and burnish it slightly, it's going to go a bit purple. But there's methods in my madness, because the lighter colour I'm going to use for starters is Burnt Sienna 10%, which is a purple. The base is also slightly purple, because this is... Actually, I'm not going over the Mars Black, but it will touch it and it will affect it. So just making those furrows here. No attempt at any sort of perspective, just texture. And this is a purple. That will give purple undertones, and also it echoes this hill that we started with. Okay. So I'm just going to have to move that on the side. I'm sorry about that. Just, it's easier because I need to just hill the top bits up a bit here to show that these are the high points and the others are the low point. And then I'll go in with my Chinese white, Derwent Drawing Chinese white, and just big that up a little bit more here and there. Again, not 100%. It's no point doing that because you've wasted your time if you just go over the whole thing. Just trying to lighten that. And I don't mind the graininess here. I didn't want it here, but I don't mind the graininess here because what I'm trying to show is dirt, which is grainy and textural. A little bit highlight. Right. Yeah, so natural brown, Derwent Light Fast, just to give a couple of strokes of a few more marks which add to the depth. Because although it is striped, I don't want striped, if that makes sense, which it doesn't. It's too even. So here in the front, I'm just messing the pattern up. And again with the Mars Black, deepening this, mess that up a little bit. Also going to use the Mars Black to go in here and create a bit of shadow where this other hill is then in the front, trying to bring it right into the foreground, and then of course extending the marks out. You're going to get a bit of a striped pattern in a ploughed field because, I mean, it is what it is. But I don't want it to be too tidy, and I don't want to create deliberate patterns. Okay, just like so. Bring that up. And again, bringing the dark up into those trees, which helps to tie everything together. I'm not going for deep shadows. I really love doing shadows on my work, but I'm not doing it today for the simple reason is that a sky like that isn't going to produce very many shadows at all. Hardly any. Right, so that's the ploughing. You can see it's a bit different. And we've got one tree to go. I'm going to stay with the Mars Black and doing what might look like a pointless exercise to actually go over and next to some of these branches, increase their twigginess slightly. I'm definitely leaving the other two out, and that's something else I would do in today's work, is I would decide what's not going to go in. And in this setting, these two trees are not going to go in. They could go in, but I don't think that they will add anything at all to the value of the picture. That looks really like topiary. Trying to not change too many things, but you know how it is. Back with our burnt ochres, 10 and 50%, starting with the darker one. And that's going to give us some tree texture using the paper there as texture. And the point of going over with the Mars Black to get the texture is that this lighter colour will not stick to that quite as much. It'll stick to the gaps in the texture. Wherever it can find some gouache to bite onto, it will bite onto it. Then we come back with this one. Also won't stick so well to, it won't go over the coloured pencil, but it will find the gouache gaps. There's a little bit of a mauve undertone there, which I don't mind because that's kind of the theme here, is these autumn tones. And what, it's easy then, you just go over it, it'll find its own way. Okay, you might come back in with some Chinese white and just increase the colours and textures, but that's all I would do there. And like I said, as you can see, it's quite purpley, and that's coming from the Mars Black. It will go like that when you do that over the top, which is quite nice. It's a bit of a shock and a bit jarring if you're not prepared for it though. Right, I'm going to have a little think about what I'm going to do about the leaves, and I shall return momentarily. What I've decided here is this scene depicts a late autumn, sort of when the trees are starting to go off. So the ones in the background here are kind of blobby ones, and that's how I tend to do them because they don't have as much detail. When you add detail, you bring it forward, and you don't want everything forward. I don't want everything in my picture precariously balanced on the front edge of the paper. I want some things that are pushed right back and stay there. So what I'm doing with this front tree is exactly what I've done here, except not. So here I've got little dots, and I've started with some dark dots, gone to a medium value and then to a light, to just give the indication of some leaves. And because it's so naive, that's absolutely fine. So what I've done, I've got some Light Wish acrylic markers here, and these are particularly nice. These are double-ended. They're brush tip markers, but they're acrylic. They've got 2 colours in each barrel. Then I've got some of my Plowed brush tip markers, same deal. And what I'm going to do is have a look. I think that's the darkest. I've got a brown here, which might be a little bit darker. And this time, instead, it's not very dark at all. I need the darkest one I've got. That's not dark either. This may not work yet, this experiment. Less said about it, the better. That's getting lighter. So this was the dark one. That's fine. Instead of dots, I'm doing little dashes. And this has the advantage, I can put them in clumps. I'm also extending them a bit over here so that this tree is a bit bigger than we thought. Get that canopy in. Sorry, I hope my hand is not in the way there. I don't want too many leaves because it's lost most of them, and if you were to walk along here, you'd find them. I don't want to go much further across than that either. Some of them will be in front of the trunk as they are in here, and some of them will be in front of the other branches. It's your job to decide where. So all the experiments, we'll get rid of that. So that's plenty of that one. Let's try this one. Yeah, just little bits. And against that sky, they will stand out quite a lot. Again, I'm super uncomfortable because I'm doing this absolutely cold without any practice at all, and I'm not used to using these colours, so I do hope this works out and you like what you're seeing. Let me just, yeah, that might work for a light one. That one's a bit of a ring in this one. They don't have names, these Plowed ones. This one's a number 8 and it's just from the acrylic brush pen set. Again, I'd love some open stock in these if you are listening, Plowed or Light Wish, either one. I think this time I want something light. I didn't want it that light that quick. And I'm not sure about the purple. And this is the great thing about these. You can go over the top. Okay, my Cocker Spaniel's decided that the attention's got to be on her now. So if you can hear some squeaking in the background, it's the dog. There we go. Don't want to make too big a thing of this. Like I said, it's supposed to have already lost its leaves. I don't mind the purple. The purple's not great. However, I don't mind it because I've used purple here and purple here. And in classic art terms, it's lovely to have these triangles of structure and colour. So that works perfectly as far as the rules are concerned. Yeah, I think the caps are not very accurate in these, sadly. They're not probably the tippy top sort of art materials that we usually buy, but they are very good and the colours are not too bad in their class. I don't mind using them. I think they're fine, but they're not 100% reliable. Swatching them and getting to know them is a good idea, and then remembering what you did. So I'm going to leave that because it is, at the end of the day, just an autumn tree. The final thing I would do is to grab my Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Food Nib pen and just sharpen some of these branches up. And if I felt they were needed, I could add some offshoots. This just gives a little bit of definition to the underside only. Where the pencil marks might be a little bit grainy for what I was after. And again, I have cleverly gone from right to left. Oh well. If you don't get anything artistically from these videos, hopefully you get a good laugh. Should not take ourselves too seriously. See here, for example, you could just add some twigs to show where the tree had lost some leaves. And because these food nib pens and Faber-Castell Pitt pens, should I say in general, are India ink, they will go over things, and they're quite nice and sharp. Just need something up here to balance. Right, this is what we call finished, and I'm going to take, you say that, just going to go under the roof there, which helps to reinforce the shadow and also the highlight. That's all. I promise I'm sitting on my hands now. I'm not touching that again. Right. That is how I would reinterpret this picture from 2021 with my 2024 eyes. This is what I do now. So again, totally different style. Looks like two different people did it to me. I think you can probably see where I've done things in this one, but it just looks like it wasn't me. And the way I feel about what I look back on in that time, it really wasn't me. So this is the future. I'm hoping. I like this. I do hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for watching. If you got this far, I really, really appreciate you taking the time. And like I said, don't forget to leave me a like and subscribe, and do consider joining my Patreon if you like this sort of painting. This sort, actually, not this sort. You won't get much of that. This is the sort of painting I do, and I would absolutely love to see you there, and it would be lovely to hear from you. Have a fabulous day, and I shall see you again next week. Bye.